So in college, I was actually a swimmer, and I was also an exercise science major. So I was always kind of obsessed with fitness and being active and physiology and human performance. Like I just loved all of that stuff. Now, I did kind of lose my way because after a couple of years of swimming in college, I took a completely different road, and I actually got really into drinking and partying, and I was just kind of a mess the last couple of years of college. And I always was an exercise science major, and I graduated with a degree in exercise science. And I even went on to work at some gyms. And it was kind of funny because I was working at these gyms. I had this exercise science degree, but I was a complete mess physically and mentally. Like I was, again, drinking a lot. I had a lot of really bad habits. I was gaining weight. I was a complete disaster when it came to taking care of myself. So it was funny. I would go to the gym and I would be a personal trainer, and I would tell other people what they should be doing to be more healthful and to lose weight. Yet I was doing all of the opposite stuff. It just didn't really make any sense. But the other thing that I thought was really kind of interesting is when I was an athlete in college, when I was a swimmer, like I spent so much time looking at the bottom of a pool and practicing that sport and trying to get better and trying to improve my performance so I could be faster and I could beat guys, right? Like that's what you do when you're an athlete, is you're competitive, right? Like you measure yourself against others to try and beat them. And it's what I would consider to be, it's a very kind of healthy kind of competition, right? So the way to get yourself to be a better performer in a sport like swimming or wrestling or football or whatever is you have to just perform better. Your body has to do a better job. So how do you get your body to be a better performer? Well, you have to eat good foods. You have to obviously spend time in practicing your skill. You have to think the right way, right? Like you have to think like a winner. You have to go in with some confidence, right? There's these certain things, these elements. You have to sleep good at night, right? You can't go out and drink all night. You have to take good care of yourself. Basically, you have to be as healthy as you can, because if you don't, then it's going to affect your performance. You're not going to beat the guy next to you. But as soon as I got into gym world, as soon as I became a gym elite instead of an athlete, it was really fascinating to me because the culture is completely different. When I went to the gym with the intention of helping others, right? Like the whole thing I saw, it began to revolve around mostly just aesthetics. Nobody was talking about beating the guy next to them or the girl next to them. This competitive spirit was there, but it was more along the lines of like, how lean can I be? How can I see my abs? How low can I get my body fat? Like it seemed the whole culture was only aesthetic driven. And there is no clear winner when it comes to aesthetics, sort of because like less body fat is not necessarily better, right? If you get your body fat to too low of levels, it affects your health and you kind of look silly, right? So there was no clear winner. It wasn't like swimming or like a sport. Like there's a win and a loss. Like you're faster or you're not faster, right? So it was kind of a weird culture of all aesthetic and nothing else. And I found that, anybody that walked in the gym or anybody that needed a personal trainer, when I would ask them, what is your goal? It was always something to do with aesthetics. I need to lose 20 pounds and it's got to be like right here, right? Like they would point at the exact spot that they wanted to lose weight. And, it was so different. And then looking back, hindsight's always 20/20. I look at my time in college as an exercise science major, and that's kind of what we were taught. We were taught how to get people to lose weight. And I even remember I think we called it clinicals, where we were paired up with university professors, and these university professors would pay $20 to work with a personal trainer, one of our exercise science students, to help them with their goals. And I remember working with 4 or 5 different professors, and they're like, well, my goal is to lose weight. So what we did is we tracked their calories, and we had them log that stuff. We would create meal plans for them. And this was kind of pre-internet. Internet was super, so it was all kind of handwritten. It was very cumbersome. But so we did a little bit of that. And then it was also getting people on different exercise machines, right? So we would take them to the university fitness center and we would kind of take them through these machines. This is what we were being taught, right? And we'd have them do their seated press, and we'd have them do their seated pull downs, right? And all of these different various machines that were in this fitness center. And then maybe we'd get them on a treadmill and we would use fat burning zones, if you remember fat burning zones, right? Like there were even little charts on the treadmills and the elliptical machines where you could figure out what your fat burning zone was. And it was always very low intensity. So we'd get these, these people on there and they would just go it was almost laughably slow. You can't go too fast. God forbid you go too fast, because then you're out of your fat burning zone. Like it was bizarre. So I went from athlete into now what I call gym-leet. Gym-leet is a completely different culture that's primarily focused on weight loss. And it never really resonated with me. I just never felt that good about it. So I started getting into the bodybuilding kind of world. And in the bodybuilding world, you were sort of measured by, back in the day, this was like late 90s, early 2000s, it was more of like, it was still aesthetically based, but at least there was a little bit of competition there, because it was like, how much do you bench? Right? Like that was a big one. Like, how much do you bench? Like all I cared about was how much I benched and how big I was. Like I wanted to gain muscle. And I was around a bunch of guys at this gym. This one of the first jobs I had was at this gym, and it was kind of a bodybuilding gym. So there was a bunch of guys in there who were semi-pro football players. Most of them were on like tons of supplements and admittedly were taking a lot of steroids. So these guys were fucking jacked, like just big, massive dudes. And I remember there's one guy there who was literally just looked like a professional bodybuilder. He was so lean and his muscles were just so big. He was just super jacked and just looked like, literally looked like the Statue of David. And I remember seeing that guy and I'm like, oh my God. I even remember one time going to a festival. I grew up in Milwaukee and there was this thing called Summerfest. So we went to Summerfest and I was with this guy and he always walked around with his shirt off. I guess if you look like that, why wouldn't you, right? But I remember like girls just from everywhere would walk up to this guy and they'd be like, can I just touch your abs? And I'm like, I can't even believe this is real, right? Like this guy was just being swarmed by these women who just wanted to like just touch his muscles. It was pretty bizarre. But I'm like, man, that's pretty cool, right? So again, the gym-leet world is largely based on just aesthetics. Like it's just how you look. So completely different than the athlete game, right? Where we're just focused on performance. So what happened to me is after a bunch of years in this kind of bodybuilding kind of world, I started to get kind of tired of it because it just wasn't that much fun. It wasn't that rewarding. Like clients would come in and the other sort of myth that I had been taught kind of through my exercise science days was that if you get people to exercise, that they'll automatically lose weight and look amazing, which wasn't the case. So I would have these clients come in and they'd be like, number one goal is to lose weight. They got to lose 30 pounds, whatever. So we'd get them on an exercise program. And in my mind, because of what I was taught, we were told that if you get them exercising and burning calories, that they're going to lose weight. But that never really happened, right? It was a false belief. It wasn't true. It was like I was lied to. And I've got these exercise science PhDs telling me that this is all we need to do, but they didn't even, did they know that was wrong? I'm not sure. Looking back, I'm like, it's malpractice. You have to work on your nutrition. I didn't really learn this until later. So I was kind of frustrated. I'm like, I don't understand. I'm working these people. We're in the fat burning zone. We're doing the muscle building stuff. We're doing all that stuff. So you should be leaner. So my clients were like, well, why am I not losing any weight? And there would be small discussions about nutrition, but that was never really the emphasis. And again, this is my story. So maybe if you're an exercise guy, maybe you had a little different experience, but what it ultimately turned out to be was obviously we have to look at the nutrition, right? So anyways, long story short is I got through this kind of bodybuilding phase and I ended up getting hooked up with a guy who was into sports performance. And he was a strength conditioning coach for a college in Wisconsin called Carroll College. And he was a strength conditioning coach for the football players. And that's when I started to get back into true human performance. So instead of everything is revolved around aesthetics, we started looking at this as more of we're trying to help people to improve their actual performance. And what I found is that he kind of articulated this much nicer for me, but I found that nutrition, of course, is a big part of this. But also when we chase human performance and we set up certain measurements around human performance, we can plug that into someone's life and with the right supportive nutrition program, we can not only get them to lose weight, but they perform so much better. And at that period of time, I was working with a lot of folks who were older. And when I say older, remember back in the day, I was like in my 20s. So these guys were in their like 40s, 50s, 60s, and they were very successful kind of business people. And we did a lot of like, the whole studio was just one-on-one personal training with these folks. So I started to see these guys and these girls get really incredible results. And not only were they looking a lot better, but they were also performing a lot better. And when you're a guy over 40, like that's what you really want. Like these guys or girls didn't necessarily care about ripped abs. They didn't necessarily care about being as lean as they could possibly get, which was like a complete culture shift, right? So this was not the traditional gym. This was like a private personal training studio meant for like executives. And like they were getting great results, like better results than the people that I was getting in these old school bodybuilding gyms, right? So I knew that there was something else there. And that's when I started to get really excited. I started to get really excited again. And I started tapping back into what I call the athlete identity. So instead of being a gym-leet, I could now become, I started getting back to my athlete roots, where again, we were focusing on human performance. So very, very different. And that was working really well for me, but I was still spending a lot of time in bars. I was still drinking a lot. I still had there was a lot of stuff going on in my mind. I just wasn't in a good place mentally, even though physically I was getting a little bit better. And all of that changed when I was diagnosed with cancer.